All right, we are back. Farzin Vasugian here with you for another episode of the Chiefs Zone podcast. On a late Saturday, we have roughly 14 and a half hours before kickoff. So this podcast is going to be a very short one. We will get straight to the point. It'll be sweet and short, all of that good stuff here. Talking mostly Chiefs Browns. Going to touch on a couple of other stuff, but going to keep it mostly Chiefs Browns due to the time constraint here. But yes, we are back here on the Chiefs Zone podcast. This podcast is brought to you by SeatGeek. SeatGeek is the place where I go to for all of my sports ticketing needs. And if you need a last minute Christmas gift for a friend, a family member of yours, SeatGeek is the place to go. Why not? Get your tickets from there. They keep you honest. They let you know if you're paying too much for a ticket or if you're paying for a great price for certain tickets. And all you have to do is select those tickets and at checkout, use my promo code Farzine and you will save $20 off your first order from SeatGeek. Go to SeatGeek.com, pick your ticket, and at checkout, if you're a new customer, use my promo code Farzine and you'll save $20 off your first purchase from SeatGeek. Happy Saturday to all of you. Yeah, we don't normally do this on a Saturday. I am back in the United States of America. I was in Cancun, Mexico for 7 days. That is it was beautiful. It was not sweltering hot or the humidity didn't have to deal with any of that. It was beautiful. The waves were nice, the beach was great, all of that good stuff. It was one of those vacations where it was like, man, I do not want to leave. Here's the thing with me on vacations. Like, I love traveling, but I hate hotels. I hate hotels. Hotel beds. Like, as soon as I'm sleeping the first night, I'm like, oh man, I'm already looking forward to my actual bed. Still was the case this trip, but boy, the weather was just beautiful. It was just great. It was one of those like beach vacations I did not want it to end. So yeah, that's the type of vacation it was. I will just leave it at that. It was great. I was there with my family for my mom's birthday. A lot of you guys wish her a happy birthday. You guys are awesome. I appreciate you guys. You guys are the best. With that said, obviously we will break down the game between the Chiefs and the Browns. Because it's a shorter podcast and I want to get straight to the point just to give everyone enough time to listen to this podcast. We're going to touch on a couple of other topics, just not going to spend too much time on these other things. But there are a couple of news and notes that I do want to touch on here regarding the NFL with week 15 and everything going into this game between the Chiefs and the Browns. Harrison Butker is back. The Chiefs let go of Matthew Wright, the reigning AFC Special Teams Player of the Week. When has a Player of the Week, like the reigning Player of the Week, ever been let go? The week he won the award. I don't think that's ever happened before. So the Chiefs, they're making history. Every kind of history the Chiefs can make, they're doing it. The amount of one-score games they're winning, letting Player of the Week guys go while they're trying to three-peat. They're doing all kinds of things this year. And that is the Kansas City Chiefs for you in 2024. Also, some news regarding DJ Humphries. And also Isaiah Pacheco was fined. And his fine is getting a lot of responses from people in and outside of Kansas City. And I definitely want to weigh in on that as well. I do want to look. I did a post-game live stream from my phone from my hotel. And I just want to give my thoughts real quickly on last Sunday's game. I said this during the game. Why in the hell is Andy Reid shying away from the run game, especially on third and short situations? Because when the Chiefs, when it's 3rd and 1 or 2 or 3, they're going deep down the field. And I get it. You don't want to make it obvious to your opponents. But man, those deep shots just have not been there for Kansas City this season. If they work, great. I'm not criticizing it. No one is and no one should. But when they're not working, not just they're not working, they're not even close to coming to fruition. But then what did the Chiefs do in the fourth quarter? They started running the football. They committed to the run game. And that is what they need to do this Sunday. If they did more of that against the Chargers, we probably would not have had another insane heart attack type of a game where you just mislead the opposing team and rip their hearts out of their chest like the villain Kansas City is. I don't know what's with the Chiefs just giving all these opposing teams all this false hope. I mean, listen, a lot of teams, only one team can win the Super Bowl. And if all these other teams cannot win, well, they can at least say they beat the Chiefs. I remember the Chiefs were in that position when they were able to beat the Patriots a couple of times. At the time, the standard was not high in Kansas City. But then you just take it away last second from the... You know, it's interesting. When the Chiefs beat the Panthers by 3 points, I saw a lot of people say that this is a good thing for the Panthers because they made it so close with the Super Bowl champs and all these things. I'm like, wait a minute. I thought the Chiefs were overrated, according to all of you out there outside of Kansas City. So all of a sudden the Chiefs are overrated, but when teams like the Panthers can make it close, it's a good thing. You can have a moral victory with that kind of thing. Here's my problem. The Panthers are not a unique football team. They're not a special team out there. Every single team, good or bad, is having close games with Kansas City. And by the way, again, the notion out there that the Chiefs are skating through a really bad schedule. Are we sure about that? I mean, first of all, Kansas City's schedule for the rest of the season, starting, last week's game in December all the way through the end of the year, it's actually very difficult. Looked easy in the offseason when we first saw the schedule. People thought, okay, the Chiefs are going to skate by, playing the Broncos, the Chargers, teams that a lot of people did not think would compete so much. But if you look at this little graphic here, the narrative that the Chiefs get through an easy schedule does not fit. I mean, look at that there. Kansas City has the same record as Detroit when it comes to beating teams that are currently in position to make the playoffs. And by the way, what do all 6 of these teams have in common? These teams all have double-digit wins, don't they? Yeah, they all have double-digit wins. So of the 6 teams that have double-digit wins on the season, this is what their record looks like against teams that are currently in playoff position. Obviously, the Chiefs and Steelers will play each other on Christmas. The Lions and Bills play each other this coming Sunday. The Eagles have a marquee game this Sunday, do they not? I just can't remember. Oh, wait, don't the Eagles and the Steelers play this Sunday? So you're going to get a couple of these. You're going to see a lot of change in what you see right now in front of you, but the idea that the Chiefs are beating bad teams, barely beating bad teams, no, that does not fit the narrative. I think a lot of people need to start doing some research and stop being lazy and understand the Chiefs they're beating some good football teams out there. And again, it doesn't matter if it's a bad team or a great team. The Chiefs are just barely beating everybody this year. Not ideal. And I know a lot of people are saying, well, the Chiefs are saving their best stuff for the playoffs. I don't believe that, man. I don't believe that. Andy Reid's been doing this a very long time. He's got probably the thickest playbook of any coach in the NFL right now. Look, unless you're running a play on every single second of a game, which is obviously impossible, it's impossible to run through your entire playbook. Because I get this a lot. Oh, Andy doesn't want to show too much. What does that mean? So you're going to risk possibly losing? I don't know, man. Listen, I'll say this. They're winning football games. That's all that matters right now. I know a lot of people make a huge deal about Detroit and them blowing teams. Well, first of all, Detroit's not blowing out teams recently. They're just not. They're skating by some... let's just say not so elite competition lately. They're just not. So when it comes to the last couple of weeks, how's Detroit so much different than Kansas City? I don't think they are. I just don't. And by the way, if you want to, let's stick to that narrative of, oh, Detroit's blowing out teams. Buffalo's blowing out teams. Okay. who were the top 5 teams in the NFL when it came to point differential? I don't remember the order, but I do remember the 5 teams. It was the Cowboys. The Cowboys were number 2. I remember that. And then the other 4 teams, I'll try to do it best I can in order. I think it was number 1, Baltimore. Number 3 was San Francisco. Number 4 was Buffalo. And number 5 was Miami. Okay, so the Cowboys were number 2. They were 1 and done in the playoffs last year. What about the other 4 teams that were in the top 5? What do they all have in common? Oh, yeah, they all lost to Kansas City in the playoffs last year. The teams that were blowing everyone else out, the Ravens were blowing a bunch of teams out last year. The 49ers were blowing a bunch of teams out last year. They could have beat the Chiefs. And by the way, let me, Ray, I see your question. We'll get into that shortly about the offensive tackles, because that is a very important talking point for sure. But people are saying, well, the Chiefs are skating by with a toe out of bounds, with a pass interference. By the way, I love how people are still talking about that pass interference penalty against the Bengals, saying that it was a questionable pass interference. You have to be the biggest moron in the world, or you just don't know football at all, if you think that is a quote-unquote questionable pass interference penalty. Man, I love the people who want to question officiating when their preferred team does not win a football game. I love that narrative. That narrative's a lot of fun to listen to. Really is. But they bring that up. They bring up the block field goal and the miracle fumble by the Raiders. And then again, the doink this time. That's what's going on. You know who else got by with a block? The Bengals on Monday Night Football. I know the Bengals are not really in any position to threaten the Broncos to take away their wild card spot, but I mean, they're at least trying. And didn't they just win on a miracle on Monday Night Football? I mean, if Dallas does not, listen, in a weird way, sometimes a bad punt or a blocked punt in this case can be a great thing if it just hits someone on the receiving team. And Dallas they weren't ready for it. You know who else won on a blocked punt? The Rams. They just beat the Bills. Now, the big difference is in that one, it didn't happen in the fourth quarter late in the game. It happened in the first half. But when you look at the final score and look at what happened in the game, the Rams beat the Bills by just 2 points. So when you look at the difference makers, the number one difference maker was the blocked punt in that football game. And by the way, I told you guys when the Bills were down by, I think, 18, I said, don't write off the Bills. They're coming back, and they did. They never, I don't think they ever took the lead in this game, but boy, they were not giving up. They were absolutely not giving up in this game. So we have other teams that are winning similar ways with a blocked punt, something that needs to go their way that doesn't happen often. Now, do those teams do it consistently like the Chiefs? No, of course not. But at the end of the day, it's all about the wins and losses. Show me on the NFL's website or on ESPN's website or any of these football websites, Pro Football Reference, Pro Football Focus, any of these websites. Show me where they have a column for barely winning games. Show me where they have that column. And I think it was Skip Bayless. He said the Chiefs are the luckiest team ever. Fine by me. I'd rather be lucky than lose. I still remember when the Chiefs were the unluckiest team ever. Remember that year in 2008? Oh, they had a lot of things go against them. A lot of it. I mean, not that the Chiefs were supposed to be great that year anyway, but when they had Tyler Thigpen in there, they actually competed in a lot of football games. They just played bad second half football, blowing a lot of leads in the second half. Remember against the Bucks when Tyler Thigpen caught that touchdown? How did that end? Ended in overtime. In fact, I remember the Buccaneers, they got like 3 or 4 shots to kick a game-winning field goal in overtime. The Chiefs were offside during a miss, and then the kicker missed again, but they were called for a false start penalty, so they had to go back 5 yards. They just got all these multiple opportunities to kick a game-winning field goal in overtime to beat the Chiefs. I remember against the Chargers, that onside kick going straight through Dwayne Bowe's hands would have ended the game right there, but didn't. And I believe that ended up being a big difference maker for the Chargers, surpassing the Broncos, I believe it was, to go in the AFC West that year. So I still remember the time when the Chiefs were very unlucky. Listen, Gronk said it this week himself, and don't take it from me, okay? I'm just the guy doing a podcast. Take it from Gronk, a guy who's been part of a dynasty. He said that you need luck on your side in order to win a championship. Name me a team that's won a championship that never had a lucky moment. Can you guys name any Super Bowl winning team that's had that at any point during their championship seasons? Any of them? They all have had some lucky moments here and there. What did Colin Cowherd say? Great teams create their own luck. There's a reason why you see great teams be on the good side of luck and bad teams be on the wrong side of luck. Every once in a while, you'll see a bad team get lucky and win. But more times than not, that's not how it goes down. It just doesn't. So at the end of the day, the Chiefs are winning their football games. A lot of people outside of Kansas City do not like it. That's not how the football games are determined. They are determined by wins and losses. Who scores more points? And no, Kansas City's not scoring a lot of points. I think there are 5 teams this year that have not scored more than 30 points in a game this year. 4 of them have terrible records. The other one is Kansas City, who are obviously 12-1. It's all about the wins and losses at the end of the day. No, the Chiefs are now blowing teams out. They're not doing anything spectacular or fancy this year and last year. Now, is it possible they start, doing some things where they start scoring more and can create some separation on the scoreboard? Maybe. They're obviously using Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco more together. Hollywood Brown just practiced this week, so he's expected to come back within a week or two. You're starting to see this team click, even with the bad offensive tackle play. And I know there have been a couple of comments about the offensive tackles. DJ Humphries has a hamstring injury, nothing serious. It's not torn. He was doubtful coming into the game, but now he has been downgraded to out. I do have on good authority, he is expected to play next Saturday against the Houston Texans. Yes, the Chiefs do play on Saturday. So just be aware of that. I think DJ Humphries will come back pretty soon. And look, I watched DJ Humphries on Sunday Night Football against the Chargers. He looked like a guy who had not played football all year. Looked like a guy who was out of football shape. Kareem Hunt had some limited snaps because he was not in football shape, and he was on the injury report. And Andy Reid said part of it was because he's not in football shape, being on the couch, on the shelf for all of the 2024 calendar year, recovering from surgery, not having OTAs, training camp, preseason, none of that stuff. So that I think that's what you saw with DJ Humphries. Do I expect him to get better? Of course. Obviously, that's more hopeful thinking because that's what the Chiefs are banking on right now with one of the offensive tackles improving. It's not a good look for the offensive tackles this year. Just not. Brett Veach has got to do something with that this offseason. I know Kingsley Suamataia is going to get a second chance. And I know the Chiefs can be very patient with certain football players. Left tackle is not one you can be patient with. Just can't. I mean, if you're not getting it, you got to go. So I think they're going to give Kingsley Suamataia one more chance. But I think you have to bring in a veteran left tackle and be ready. As far as Jawaan Taylor, look, I get you're kind of stuck with him for the remainder of this year. But as far as the remainder of the season, I do not care to see, or in the future, rather, I do not care to see Jawaan Taylor ever again in a Chiefs uniform. I just don't. I'm sorry. Like, come on. How is it that, almost 2 full seasons in, you're still incorrectly lining up? How is that happening? I mean, listen, I know on the snaps, he times them perfectly, and then there are sometimes he's just a little bit too early and he gets called for that. But if you actually do slow-mo these, he actually times it perfectly on a lot of these. But the amount of sacks he's allowing, it's just, come on, man. That's got to go. He's got to go. Absolutely, he's got to go. Harrison Butker is expected to play tomorrow. He will play, actually, not expected to. Matthew Wright, reigning AFC offensive, not offensive, special teams player of the week. Look, the NFL is not. It's not a participation trophy business. Yeah, it sucks because this kid, he went from, who was it, the 49ers briefly, and then he came over to Kansas City. I mean, this guy is going from city to city, and when he's not doing that, he's just kind of waiting on the couch, probably working a regular 9-to-5 job until somebody calls him. That's life for those who do not have a consistent job in the NFL. Now, I think he's done well for himself. The only field goal he missed was that 59-yarder right before halftime. That's you can't hold that kind of thing against him. In fact, that's the only field goal the Chiefs have missed during Butker's absence. So hopefully Matthew Wright has done enough to earn himself a job. Also, I'll tell you right now, he should absolutely be the kicker for Cleveland, because their kicker is awful. It might be the worst kicker this year. Another kicker who's not doing good this year, Justin Tucker. A lot of people might say he's the greatest of all time, but that's not relevant for this year. Not at all. So I don't know. It's very interesting how that all pans out. Okay, I do want to talk about Isaiah Pacheco real quickly. He got fined today by the NFL. Well, it was announced today, but the fine was, the players are informed of this stuff earlier in the week. Isaiah Pacheco was fined $45,000, $45,020 to be exact, for unnecessary roughness, use of the helmet, but essentially lowering his upper body a little bit and leaning in with his helmet, trying to gain a couple extra yards or two. We've seen Pacheco do this many times. We've seen a lot of running backs do this over the years in the NFL. Rachaad White of the Buccaneers was fined for the same exact thing, same amount of money too. This is like 90% of Pacheco's weekly paycheck. Chase Brown of the Bengals just got fined for a touchdown celebration, and I'm thinking to myself, did he do something bad? Because I don't recall anything bad about his touchdown celebration. No, he went into that weird pot of gold thing that the Cowboys have in their end zone, I think for the Salvation Army. He just jumped into that. That's all he did. He got fined for that. This is ridiculous. I mean, you're getting fined for the most asinine things. JJ Watt had a perfect response making fun of this, saying that they're essentially just fining guys for playing football at this point. Here's my thing. I think if you're guys like Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Josh Allen, Saquon Barkley, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, y'all got to speak up together. Like, you guys have got to meet privately on Zoom or whatever you got to do and say, look, we've got teammates who are getting fined for the pettiest shit. We got to change this. This is wrong. Absolutely wrong. Because the NFLPA, the leadership there, they have failed the players greatly. I mean, how is it that the NFLPA has not fought for this and they're allowing this to happen? That is ridiculous. Now, I was on vacation, so forgive me. I haven't had a chance to listen to all of this yet. But has anyone asked Roger Goodell about these ridiculous fines? Has anyone asked about the bad officiating this year? Is anyone asking those questions to Roger Goodell? Probably not, because these reporters are scared. They're so concerned about trying to appease and acquiesce to these coaches and players and Roger Goodell. They don't want to lose their credentials. I mean, these guys are seriously some of the scariest, they're scaredy cats, essentially. Like, why are you so afraid to ask the tough questions? And Roger Goodell doesn't even want to face the media consistently. Everyone else is required to, but he doesn't have to. He just speaks a couple times a year. And when the NFL is constantly facing controversy each week, Goodell doesn't face the media. Funny how that works. Yeah, I don't know, man. Um, Heather says I'm okay with a fine, but this one amounts to about 5% of his season salary. Here's my thing. I don't care when players get fined because, if you get fined, you make more money than the average person. But you're getting fined for like the weirdest shit. This is like you're playing football and you got fined for this. That makes zero sense. Absolutely makes no sense. I don't know, man. Like what is the NFL's like? What is the realistic expectation from these players? I don't get it. I really don't get it. I don't get it. Real quickly, this is a non-Chiefs note, but I do want to weigh in on this real quickly because I do not have any sympathy. I will not sugarcoat anything that involves someone quitting. You guys recall I was very harsh on Derek Carr because he got benched after being given an opportunity for 9 seasons, and he quit on his team for the last 2 weeks rather than sticking around and being a backup. He did not want to be a quote-unquote distraction, which is, by the way, the worst excuse in the world. Eli Manning found out through the media that he was getting benched. Eli Manning had every reason to quit on the Giants, but he didn't. Instead, he decided to be a backup for Daniel Jones for the remainder of the season. I mean, you had the new receiver the Ravens acquired during the season, Johnston, who just did the same thing, refused to go into a game. And on Thursday night, during the third quarter, the 49ers were trying to put in Devondre Campbell. I guess he got upset because Fred Warner came back in his first game and took his snaps away and then got injured. So they needed Campbell back because I think they had another linebacker who got hurt. And Campbell essentially refused, and he basically walked off the field during the game. Basically did the exact same thing as Antonio Brown, except he wasn't taking off his pads and jersey and was dancing around. He wasn't doing any of that. Now, I got some pushback on this, which was very interesting. People are saying, oh, you're not considering he could be going through something. What does that mean? He could be going through something like mental health? Then why was he dressed up for the game if he's got mental health issues? The guy refused to play because he felt like his snaps were taken away by Fred Warner. And when Fred Warner got hurt unfortunately, not even a full game, he got hurt again. Campbell said, nah, you guys decided to go with him when I've been here all along. That's not how it works, man. I mean, look at Matthew Wright. Like, poor guy, he just won AFC Special Teams Player of the Week, but they let him go, and he understood that was going to happen. He knew Butker was coming back to get his spot back. You can't just quit on your team because you felt like you deserved more snaps. You can't just quit. You can't be doing that kind of thing. That's Bush League. And again, don't give me this bullshit about mental health and he was dealing with something. You know who's been dealing with something this year? Charvarius Ward. That guy lost his 1-year-old. He obviously needed to take a break from football, but then he came back and he played. And you know what Ward said after the game? He said that was sucker mentality. George Kittle just threw Campbell under the bus and said essentially saying he does not want to be associated with that guy ever again. You have George Kittle and Charvarius Ward, 2 very important players on that football team who they're not even defending this guy. Gwen says, didn't Marcus Peters do something? So yeah, this one's kind of confusing and it still gets brought up from time to time. Marcus Peters, he tossed a referee's flag into the stands, which was hilarious. Now, usually when you do something like that, you get ejected. Everybody thought he got ejected. And then he was informed, no, you were not ejected. So he came back. There was some confusion that he was ejected. Even the announcers thought he was ejected. But I guess there was no official announcement on this thing happening. So I don't know. I don't know how that all works. By the way, real quickly, how many of you guys, I'm very curious to know your guys' response. Listen, I don't listen to a lot of local radio. So you always have 810 and 610 for your sports talk stations in Kansas City. 610's god awful. And that's coming from someone who used to work there. 810's good. I mean, Seren's really good at what he does. And with all due respect to Seren, sometimes like when he starts a show, he spends 10 minutes talking about where he's doing his broadcast from, whether it's Hen House or wherever. It's like, I get it. You're at Hen House. Get on with the show. I listen to much more national radio anyway, just because I like the national perspective, whether it's the Chiefs or anything else. But 810 announced that they are going to simulcast on FM radio. 610 did this a couple of months ago, and I don't know what they're called now, something the fan. So you can still listen to that station on 610, but they call it something else now because they're also on FM as well. 810, I believe, is going to remain on calling themselves 810, but they're going to also be on a Cumulus FM station. So a question to any of you guys who listen to local sports talk radio, is that even a big deal to you? Like, what? I know 810 is trying to counter 610 on that move. I get that. But what's being accomplished? What has 610 accomplished switching to FM? What is 810 going to accomplish when they switch, not switch, but simulcast on an FM station? I mean, listen, it's not that hard to switch from FM to AM on your radio. So I really don't know how many new listeners you're really going to get because you're also on FM when you could have been doing this, by the way, many years ago. And by the way, it's 2024, almost 2025. Aren't a lot of people listening through the app anyway? I mean, I don't get that. Jim says 610 came in a lot more clear and no static around power lines. Okay. I can understand that because when I listen to Sirius XM radio, you don't get any static. So I have ESPN radio through Sirius XM, and I know 810 when they're on not doing their own programming, they air ESPN radio. I'll switch it real quickly to hear the difference. Yeah, if you're listening to ESPN radio through 810 at night, you hear the static. It's annoying as hell. But then for the Sirius XM version, yeah. No, 96.5. Okay, thank you. Yeah, whatever they're called. I mean, I don't know. I guess. But aren't a lot of people listening online anyway? That's just my thought on that. That's just my perspective. All right. I said I didn't want to waste a lot of time on other topics. Obviously, we kind of put in like 5 topics in a short amount of time here. So let's get right into Chiefs and Browns. Gonna break down this game, give you guys my score prediction, let you know everything you need to know about the Cleveland Browns. The referee for this game is Trey Blake. The announcers, Ian Eagle and Charles Davis on CBS. The Chiefs, earlier this week, I believe they were 6.5 point betting favorites. They're now 4-point betting favorites. NFL Network said it might snow. I believe it's going to snow tomorrow morning in Cleveland, and then that snow is going to turn into rain. So expect rain during the game in Cleveland. And if you're a Chiefs fan going to the game, props to you because you picked a bad one to go to in terms of the weather. Their head coach, Kevin Stefanski, 2-time coach of the year, won it in 2020 and won it last year as well. Last year, we're obviously very deserving of it given the quarterback carousel they went through. Spent a lot of time in Minnesota from 2006 to 2019 before accepting that the Cleveland job. Ken Dorsey's their offensive coordinator. He was fired by the Bills last year mid-season, and a lot of people talking about how the Bills became a better football team since then offensively. But Ken Dorsey is the offensive coordinator in his first year with the Cleveland Browns. Not a good season for Cleveland's offense in their first year with Ken Dorsey. 22nd in total offense, 15th in passing, 30th in rushing, 29th in scoring with 17.8 points per game. The worst third down offense in the NFL. You're going to get the best third down offense or the worst third down offense. And in the red zone, they are 13th. Jameis Winston, though, he is playing better football. When you look at Jameis Winston in 11 games, his stats are way better than what Deshaun Watson had in 7 games. In 7 games, Watson had 33 sacks. In 11 games, Winston's been sacked 19 times. Way less than what Watson was dealing with. 5 touchdowns and 3 picks in 7 games for Watson. Terrible numbers. Meanwhile, for Winston, he's got almost 2,000 passing yards, 15 yards away, 13 touchdowns, 9 picks, 19 sacks in those 11 games. Playing much better in 11 games than Watson did in 7 games. Threw 3 touchdowns and no picks in the win against Baltimore a couple of weeks ago. On Monday Night Football in that epic showdown against the Broncos, he had 4 touchdowns, but he did have 3 picks, and I believe 2 of them were very late in that game. Almost had 500 yards in that game. Last week's game, he was 21 of 42 for 212 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 picks when they played the Steelers. That was the revenge game for the Steelers. Jerome Ford, their running back, has 367 yards on the season, had 103 yards in the last 5 games. That is not very good, especially for your top running back on the team. Nick Chubb, who's been there for what feels like a very long time, obviously even played alongside Kareem Hunt when Kareem Hunt was there. Started playing October the 20th of this year, has 291 rushing yards, playing much better than Ford is on an average type of numbers there. 3 touchdowns on the ground, 1 through the air. Jerry Jeudy's actually having a really good season for Cleveland. One of the very few bright spots on Cleveland's football team. Jeudy has 944 yards. That is the 4th most. He had 235 yards on Monday Night Football against Denver. Just playing a really good football. He has 4 touchdowns on the year. 3 of them are within the last 4 games. So he's starting to find the end zone more recently for the Browns. He has the 2nd most yards per game since week 8. Only Jamar Chase has better numbers in that category there. Elijah Moore, 481 yards, 1 touchdown. He had 111 against the Broncos. David Njoku, an underrated tight end in my eyes. He's got 5 touchdowns on the season, the most by anyone on the team. He is questionable with a hamstring injury. Cedric Tillman, a wide receiver who's been good for them, but he is out with a concussion. As far as their offensive line goes, they do have some weaknesses here. Joel Bitonio, the left guard, 29 pressures allowed, 7 committed penalties. Jack Conklin, the right tackle, 27 pressures, 4 sacks allowed. And their center, Ethan Pocic, I think I said that right, 26 pressures and 3 sacks allowed. Now, I say all of that, but I also mentioned, I expect George Karlaftis to play great or Chris Jones to play great. They just don't tend to get the best of these guys. And Jameis Winston, he does a good job of finding open receivers. And the Chiefs recently have been allowing those open receivers. We'll see if Steven Nelson, returning to Kansas City, coming out of retirement, if he can make a difference in that category there. Josh Williams looks like he's expected to play, so hopefully he can prevent that from happening. But you got some weaknesses on that Browns offensive line. The Chiefs have their offensive tackles. I mean, that's a big weakness on their offensive line, but the Browns have some pass protecting issues as well, if we're being honest here. Browns defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz, a very familiar name, was the former Lions head coach from 2009 to 2013, defensive coordinator for the Bills, so another coordinator from the Bills at one point. Also was with the Eagles, Titans senior defensive assistant for a couple of years, and made his way to Cleveland, back to being a defensive coordinator last year. 21st in total defense, 13th against the pass. Makes a lot of sense when you consider who they have up front. 22nd against the run. Only Andy Reid knew that. 26th in points per game. Third down, they're the 11th best third down defense. And when it comes to red zone defense, they are 19th in that category. Obviously, the player I'm referencing, Myles Garrett, tied 2nd in the NFL on sacks with 11, tied 6th in the NFL with 3 forced fumbles. So Myles Garrett, I believe the reigning defensive player of the year, just continuing to do what he's always done his entire career, just continues to get better. Had a 3-sack game against the Chargers and the Steelers last month. So he's been playing very well lately. He had 1 sack and 3 QB hits on Russell Wilson last week. Some of the other guys on that front line right there, Dalvin Tomlinson has 3 sacks. Ogbo, how do you say his name? Okronwoko, he's got 3 sacks as well. Isaiah McGuire had a forced fumble last week. That's his second on the season. And then when you look at some of the linebackers they have, Devin Bush, who anchors that defense, Jordan Hicks has a couple of sacks, Jeremiah Uwasu Koroma, or Koromoa, excuse me, good run stuffer, but suffered a neck injury in late October, so he's going to be out of this game, which is unfortunate because that would have been interesting to see how the Chiefs would have tried to combat a guy like him, a really good run stopping linebacker like him. When you look at their secondary, not a lot of good names there. Denzel Ward, he has 2 picks on the season. Both came last month, one against the Saints, one against the Broncos. Martin Emerson Jr., part of that unit as well. Greg Newsome the second. Their nickelback, Cameron Mitchell. Their strong safety, Grant Delpit. He leads the team in tackles with 84. And then Juan Thornhill, not really having a great season, but everyone listening knows who Juan Thornhill is, was the second-round pick for Kansas City back in 2019. The second of 2 second-round picks that year. Obviously, Mecole Hardman being the other one. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention Mecole Hardman, who suffered a knee injury and had surgery. Looks like he's on IR for now, but we don't know for how long. If he's had surgery, that might be it for the season for Mecole Hardman. Let me just quickly say this before I forget. Mecole Hardman got off to a great start his first 2 seasons with the Chiefs, I thought. Rookie year, I thought he played great, especially filling in for, I think that was 2019. That was Tyreek Hill when he suffered an injury and missed 4 or 5 games that year. And Mecole Hardman was doing well. And I thought in 2020, his second year, he did some good things earlier in the season. But I would say ever since the midway point of 2020, what has Mecole Hardman done? I mean, he had that big catch early in the game in the Super Bowl last year, and then he had the walk-off touchdown. But other than that, like, what has Mecole Hardman done for anyone to be able to say, oh, yeah, that player right there, Mecole Hardman? Like, we haven't seen, like, Mecole Hardman, he looked like he was going to be a dynamic receiver with the things he was doing the first 1.5 seasons with the Chiefs. Now it's like, man, I don't know. I think you got to move on from him. As much as I like what he's done, and obviously last year had the walk-off, which was a huge moment for him. He just hasn't been able to deliver with the skill set he has. I think you got to move on from him if you're Kansas City after this year. So just wanted to give my thoughts on that. Jake says he's done more than Juju and Sky. I don't know if I would agree with Juju. I mean, Juju had like 100 and some yards against the Saints this year. Sky Moore, yeah, I'll buy that one, Jake. I think everyone has done more than Wanya Morris has done more than Sky Moore, and everyone hates Wanya Morris. That guy has a touchdown this year. Sky Moore has 2 drops and no catches this year. I mean, I know he's injured, but still, Jesus Christ! Like Sky Moore was supposed to. I mean, he was supposed to he was the guy that was supposed to like break tackles and do all these other things, and he can't catch. He just can't. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that up before I forgot, because I did forget to. I forgot to mention that early on in the podcast. Special teams, Bubba Ventrone, been doing it for a long time. Played for the Patriots. Was part of that team that almost went 19-0. But he did return to the Patriots at one point as a coach and won Super Bowl 51, the epic comeback against the Falcons. You remember that one? So he spent some time as a coach with the Patriots, then to the Colts, and now he is with the Cleveland Browns. Their kicker, Dustin Hopkins, 34 years old, by far the worst season he's ever had. 16 of 25, 64% of his field goals he's made, which is really bad. He's also missed 2 PATs this year. Was 0 of 2 last week against the Steelers, was 1 of 2 the week before. He has never had a field goal percentage below 79% in any season, and he's got 64% this year. So not a good year for Dustin Hopkins. Their punter, Corey Bojorquez, he's in the top half when it comes to punt average and net punting average. So they've got at least something going on special teams. As far as their returner, it was Kadarius Toney. But Kadarius Toney, he fumbled a punt return, and then there was another punt return where he fair caught it. But then I guess he threw the football at a Steelers player and was called for taunting on that. I mean, Kadarius Toney just was bad last week. Really, really bad. He also dropped a pass in that Monday Night Football game against Denver. So it's just, again, kind of like Sky Moore and McCole Harbin, like you have the skill set, but you can't catch. What is it with wide receivers not being able to catch? I don't get it, man. I still remember when the draft in 2021, a lot of people were saying, don't let Kadarius Toney get to the Chiefs. And listen, he did do some good things with the Chiefs in 2022, but that was it. Man, it's just crazy to see Kadarius Toney, the downfall. I mean, he has hit rock bottom. Like, I don't know, like if the Cleveland Browns don't see a use for you, who will? I mean, I'm sorry, like, I don't want to be harsh when I say this, but I think you got to go to the XFL or Arena League somewhere else, because I don't think NFL teams are going to be patient with you when they see you can't even catch a football on offense or on special teams. That bad. So they're probably going to go back to James Prock the second for punt returns. And then they have a running back who they use for kick returns there. So yeah, that's unfortunate for Kadarius Toney. I was hoping he would find success somewhere else, but no. I mean, ever since that Detroit game last year, it's just been a downfall for him. So anyway, that is the Cleveland Browns in a nutshell. That is my breakdown of the Chiefs and the Browns. Look, the Chiefs have got to run the football, especially with the weather expected to be very bad. How do you stop great pass rushers like Myles Garrett? Oh, yeah, you run the ball. What do you do when it's raining? Oh, yeah, you run the football. Seems like the perfect opportunity for Andy Reid to throw the football 50 times with Patrick Mahomes. I mean, am I wrong here? Like, listen, real talk. I do think the Chiefs will run and go run heavy in this game. I mean, again, how do you stop a great pass rusher? Run the ball. The weather, you got to think they do it at some point, and this is the game where they do it. So even though you're not going to have DJ Humphries, this isn't really a bad game for him to miss, even though it is Myles Garrett we're talking about here. So I don't know. At the end of the day, I just think if you're Kansas City, you got to run the ball. Kingsley Suamataia, not a good pass blocker. Really, really, really good run blocker. Not a good pass blocker, but a great run blocker. So maybe they utilize that. Yeah, going on with you. I'd like to see them to use tight ends more, but they haven't been doing much of that. They've tried to, but they don't do it often. Not as often as they should. So I expect the Chiefs to run the ball a lot in this game. As far as the Chiefs' defense goes, the Browns don't have a good rushing attack, so they're going to have to rely on Jameis Winston to come through and make plays for them. So if you're Kansas City, be ready for that play action, because with their running game being as bad as it is this year, they're probably going to want to throw off Kansas City as much as they can, because they know Kansas City's really good against the run, a top 5 run defense in the NFL. The best running back this year, I think, might have been Jordan Mason to run for 64 or 65 yards. And the other one was Chuba Hubbard, same amount. I mean, no running back has been able to really beat the Chiefs this season. So I'm wondering if Cleveland decides to mix things up a bit. We'll see what Kevin Stefanski and what their offensive coordinator Ken Dorsey wants to do against this Chiefs defense. It'll be very interesting. Again, they're 30th in rushing, and you're facing a top 5 run defense. So running the football is not going to work in this one for Cleveland. So I'd be very curious to see how creative the Browns get in this football game. Look, I think it's going to be another low-scoring game, and I think the weather is going to be a big part of it. The only way I think the Chiefs can score some more points is if they go run heavy in this one. I think they'll run. I just don't think they'll go run heavy. So I'm going to go 17-13 Kansas City. That is my score prediction for that game. 17-13 Kansas City. A couple of questions here. I saw some people mentioning the Bills here. Tyler says, how do you feel about for Kansas City needing the number 1 seed with a Bills and a Steelers loss and a KC win? Tyler, right now it's at a 77% according to ESPN's analytics. I mean, Kansas City's in the driver's seat right now, and they got a big gift from the Rams. And I saw Bills fans upset because they just allowed 44 to the Rams, and then they went on to score 12 against the 49ers. I mean, I get it. It was raining, but still, that was frustrating for a lot of Bills fans. So the Rams did you a massive solid because the Bills, honestly, they've got a very easy schedule, but they lost to the Rams, who were not above 500 until just recently, until they beat the Bills. Now they got the Lions to deal with. That is not going to be an easy bounce back game for the Bills. So I'm very curious to see. Yeah, Tyler, I'm with you. They do need that number one seed because when the Chiefs rested their starters in week 18 last year, that helped Kelsey and Mahomes a lot. It really did. So if you can get that number one seed, and if you can rest the players for another game also, boy, that's going to go a long way. And by the way, you know what the bad part is? Kansas City can probably rest their starters in week 18, maybe the Christmas game. Maybe. I think that might be wishful thinking, but Kansas City should be able to rest their starters in week 18. Meanwhile, the Steelers and the Bills, they're probably going to be fighting for the number 2 seed in the AFC. So those guys are both going to have to fight in week 18, not against each other, but whoever they're playing in week 18. I think the Bills play the Patriots. I can't remember who the Steelers play. And then they have to get ready to play a week later. Now they get to be at home, which is nice, but not having that bye week and letting the back-to-back reigning champs get it, that would be a massive blow to those two teams right there. So I'd be very curious. And yeah, James mentioned they're getting Hollywood Brown back, so which is going to be huge. So that's you. Yeah, look, what did I say on my picks? I picked the Lions to beat the Bills. I believe I picked the Eagles to beat the Steelers. No, I'm sorry. I picked the Steelers. Honestly, man, I could go back and forth with that game, but I am going to stick with that Steelers prediction because I just love Pittsburgh's defense. And by the way, I'm very curious. How does Pittsburgh's defense do against Saquon Barkley? Because that's who the Chiefs might play in the Super Bowl. It's either the Eagles or the Lions. And I'm very curious to see how the Chiefs' run defense would do against that duo of Montgomery and Gibbs or Barkley. I'd be very curious to see. That. Those are two great 325 kickoff games. Bills, Lions, and then Steelers, Eagles. And the fact that neither one of those two teams are playing on Sunday night is a damn shame. It really, really is, because those two games are going to be really good. So, I mean, I'll be podcasting during the first half of those two games, but I will have my eyes glued to the TV for those two matchups right there. So definitely going to be watching that. Okay, 17-13. That is my score prediction. I am out of here. My name is Farzin Vousoughian. Appreciate you guys being patient this week on the podcast. I'm back. We are back. I'll be back tomorrow morning, 8:30 Central Time. We will do the pregame live chat. If you guys haven't had a chance to listen to the beginning of the podcast, we're about to archive it right now. It's going to go on Apple and Spotify very, very soon. So be on the lookout for that. Share the links with your friends. Let them know about the podcast. Tomorrow morning, we're doing our pregame live chat, 8:30 Central Time. We'll do the halftime live stream. And after the game, we will do the Chiefs Zone podcast live back to our normal post-game live stream with your video call. So make sure you guys call in after the game and we can chat it up. Hopefully talking about the Chiefs improving to 13-1 on the season, increasing their chances of getting the number 1 seed. I'm Farzin Vousoughian. Thank you all for listening. I will talk to you all later. Take care.